I'm Derrick Weyrauch. I'm the president and CEO of GT Resources. We're an exploration stage company focused on copper, nickel, and PGEs.
Derrick, good to see you again. It's been a while. In fact, we should let people know a secret. Usually, you and I have got lots of things to talk about, about what's going on in the market. We sometimes say, we won't do the interview. I have some of the most interesting conversations with you, and then I run out of time. So that's my fault. But here we are. We're going to do it.
This is why we're rescheduled after Father's Day. So belated Father's Day to you. Happy Father's Day.
Right. Okay. Let's get into it. You've raised a bit of money recently. People say, well, why do that?
Yeah. Well, we raised about $1.8 million, closed the financing last Thursday with the focus of using all that money on our Canalask project in the Yukon. It's a nickel-copper story that is just off of the highway, and we're really excited to get in there. It's a project we actually acquired about 2 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably time for a little recap, a little reboot of that story for us, if you don't mind. So copper, obviously, very, very topical at the moment. Nickel, we know a lot about. Remind people of what you've got up there. What do you know today?
So Canalask is on the Cloanie-Mafic Ultramafic dike. It's a large regional structure on the western side of the Yukon. It's about 4.5-hour drive from Whitehorse. We're just off of the Alaska Highway, so tremendous access. But what we've got there is a project that was a Falconbridge project back in the 2000s. And when they got taken out, the project was dropped and went into a junior untouched for about 15 years. What's interesting, one of the reasons that we really grabbed this thing is that the dike is preserved its original geometry. And there's a historic footwall deposit of about 400,000 tons of nickel. Unfortunately, they never reported the copper, but perhaps that's good for us. That's sitting there completely unexplained. So what we've been focused on the last 2 years is to get all the data together, revisit what had been done before, verify, get some drill targets in place, and then go look for the source of that mineralization.
Right. You're kind of missing one of the key components of that story, which certainly got me going, which was the grades.
Yeah, the grades are very good. Just the nickel alone is about 1.35%. So, fantastic grade near surface. And they didn't, like I said, they didn't report the copper. We have copper grab samples that we've taken up to 6%. So, very high grade. Obviously, it would be nice to get that in a resource. We don't suspect we can get that quite that high, but there's lots of mineralization there. It's a matter of chasing it. And what our real focus here is massive sulfides. We're not looking for a disseminated story. We're looking for high-grade massive sulfides, and hopefully we can get that combination of nickel and copper when we start drilling.
Right, so you've got the money, you got to drill. What type of drilling? What are you getting after?
It's diamond drilling. We're going to be poking holes in about 400 to 500 meters in depth. And we'll probably start off with a fence of about 4 or 5 holes. The Maxwell plate, it's sort of a geophysical term, if you will, or style, has been defined as about 1 kilometer in length by 400 meters in width. So we'll be going into that and trying to then do some downhole electromagnetic surveys to try and locate those higher grades of mineralization via.
Right. Okay. And with regards to when does it start? When does it finish? Because it's up in the Yukon, right?
We're mobilizing currently. I think drilling will start at the beginning of July, probably first week, and we will be going initially through the end of August.
Okay, fantastic. I guess we'll hear more as you know more. Tell me this, Finland. Any thoughts about what you do with that land package? There are land packages there.
Well, yeah, Finland is very strategic for us. We have a large resource there disseminated in a sill-like structure at our LK project. Joining it, we have the KS project, which is a completely different geological structure. It's, again, one of these large dike-type systems that we believe has placed or fed the LK project. And what's interesting there is that the Finnish Geological Survey poked a hole in it and has released a bunch of data a couple months ago. And they actually covered, as part of the work that they did, a small segment of our secondary property, which we call the KS project. So it's a large regional structure. They spent millions and millions of dollars on various geophysical techniques to try and model this regional scale dike. The drill hole they did proved up that it is the right type of rocks. Unfortunately, they did not hit the bottom of it. They lost the hole when they took Christmas off, unfortunately. But we've got the right type of rock. So we are getting ourselves organized. We'll be running a geophysical program later this year, possibly, depending on weather conditions. It's going to have to move into a January, February timeframe. And then we would look to drill that. The wonderful thing there is that the LK project has extremely high tenor, or basically metal content in the sulfides. You're talking about 3 ounces of precious metal, 10% nickel, 13% copper. And if we can find even a small unit in a trap or an embayment within KS, it could be extremely valuable rock. And so that's really what our objective is there. But it's going to be deeper drilling than we have at LK, which is at surface. So it's going to cost more money. And for that reason, we've been very slow to move towards that project. We really want to have it de-risked before we put a drill hole in it.
Right. And presumably keeping your options open as to how you finance that, whether
exactly.
it be partnership, farm in, farm out, etc.
But we have an excellent treasury. So the money we just raised, this 1.8, is specifically designed for Canalask. It was done at basically double the current share price, right? Because it was a structured financing that we did here in Canada. We still have, based on the March 31st numbers, over $10 million in addition to what we just raised. So we're extremely well capitalized and have the financial wherewithal to take advantage of what we see.
But I'll leave that for later. I want to get on one last one, which is obviously Tyco, nickel, copper again, with well above average grades across the board. What's the plan?
We are still dealing with extreme permitting delays. It's just the nature of where we are in the province. We did, however, receive one permit for the Moshkanabi zone about a month and a half ago. We're waiting for another permit. Once we get that, we'll look at possibly doing a drill program. It just, from a mobilization cost perspective, looking at one target just doesn't make sense from an economics perspective.
Right, and which kind of leads on nicely to where I wanted to go, which is obviously the state of the market. It's especially North America crying out for green metals, and yet at the same time making it difficult for explorers. We have a hard enough time in terms of the cost of capital out there by slowing things down. What's your take, first of all, in terms of the world of junior explorers such as yourself at the moment? What needs to change?
Well, we need to get funding or more funding into the junior explorers. Right now, I think there's a lot of appetite for critical minerals. I think there's a lot of capital around for the copper, nickel stories. That's really not an issue. But the big pools of money need big projects. They need big market caps, so they want to deploy more money. So if you are a junior with, let's say, $20, $30 million market capitalization, it's just not big enough for them to get overly excited with. They don't have the liquidity. So I think one of the challenges that juniors have is that they need to get bigger to become relevant to the institutional investors. And that's really what our focus is to get that relevance. But in the meantime, we've found some very good support from Glencore, who owns about 16% of the company now. Eric Sprott's the second largest shareholder. And we've got a number of other players that have sizable positions in the company. But as a whole, the junior space is struggling with access to capital.
Right. And I guess you buck the trend there. You over $10 million worth in the treasury. That puts you in a position of being able to either wait the market out and not do too much, or go and raise money as you have done and get after the project up in the Yukon. But that's unusual. That's not normal. So if, as you say, we need to get more money into the junior space, again, where's that going to come from, and in what shape is that going to come from? Can governments, can regulators make it easier for us?
Well, there's no doubt that governments can make it easier, and they can help support. Now, we do avail ourselves of some support in Canada, in Ontario specifically. We have the Junior Exploration Program, so they will match 50% of expenditures up to $200,000. It's something, but it's not really going to change the the world, right? So yes, additional support would be helpful. A faster permitting process and less burden on permitting would be most appreciated. Even in the Yukon, the amount of effort to get a permit is quite extraordinary. So a more structured, consistent process would help juniors significantly, because right now you've got your small teams of geos doing administrative permitting type activities, which isn't necessarily creative.
Okay. And do you find that, or are you led to, or are you tempted to, or out of necessity, do you need to have a portfolio of projects so that you can, say, do a kind of farm out, or whether you could flip it out and spell it out into Nuco, or all the other options available to you? Because the money, it's almost like you've got to generate that. You've got to work hard to get after this money, or it becomes super, super expensive, sometimes prohibitively so.
Well, I think that's right. My personal philosophy, sitting with my corporate hat on, is having multiple projects actually de-risks activities. This is a game that is highly risky, right? And not every project is going to work, although everybody will tell you their project's the best, it's going to work. The reality is that just doesn't happen. There's a myriad of things that can go wrong. You might find mineralization, to get a little bit technical, it's refractory, so now I've got a problem in terms of processing. I might have permitting, I might have social issues, I might be helicopter supported in the middle of nowhere with no infrastructure. There's a whole bunch of things. So you want, as a corporate, I think you want to have multiple projects, and if one's getting slowed down or doesn't work, you flip into the next great idea, and you test ideas, you de-risk targets and advance them and move forward. But from an investor perspective, it's a little bit different. They can get in and out of positions a heck of a lot quicker than a company can get in and out of projects. So you always have that pushback with investors saying, no, just focus on the one thing, because if it doesn't work, I can get the heck out of here. Or I don't think you have the capacity or the ability to work multiple projects. Whereas I take the view that, you maybe only want to work one or two at a time, but have a number of good quality projects in your portfolio, so you have optionality and de-risk the overall profile of the company.
Right, and not to mention different jurisdictions potentially as well, because that seems to be a rising issue across the world. Well, look, Derrick, I appreciate it. Sorry, it's meant to be a quick one, so apologies it wasn't. Let's stay in touch during the drill program as things move along there. Obviously, that'd be great. See how you get on at Canalask. And maybe, I think we had a chat before. In fact, we meant to have done this interview last week, but we got too carried away with a pretty, I thought, interesting conversation around what's happening in copper at the moment. So you're going to come and join us on the Battery Show over the next couple of weeks, and maybe we'll talk about some of those issues we discussed previously. So as always, Derrick, good to speak to you. See you soon.
Likewise. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.